When you walk into a Major League stadium, your eyes are just immediately drawn to the spectacle of it
Oh,
all.
absolutely. The lights, the colors.
Right. You see the immaculately manicured green grass, the bright white chalk lines, the massive high definition scoreboard lighting up the twilight. It just feels timeless.
Yeah, I think it does.
It feels like this natural occurrence, like it's just always been there and it always will be. But if you were to, say, somehow peel back that pristine layer of grass, you wouldn't find nature.
No, definitely not.
You'd find this incredibly complex, like highly engineered, and honestly, surprisingly fragile labyrinth of high-pressure drainage pipes and electrical conduits and structural concrete.
The plumbing.
Exactly, the
Yeah,
plane.
yeah.
And if that underground machinery cracks or gets blocked or, simply stops working well, the game stops. I mean, there is absolutely no spectacle without the plumbing.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. We get so captivated by the surface level stuff. I mean, the home runs, the diving catches, the millionaire athletes, that we completely ignore the subterranean infrastructure that's like keeping the entire enterprise from collapsing in on itself.
Right.
That plumbing is what's holding the entire multi-billion-dollar industry together.
And right now, for you listening at home, you need to know that plumbing is showing some critical stress fractures.
There's just fractures.
Yeah. If you follow baseball at all, you're probably hearing this increasingly loud ticking clock echoing in the background because the current Major League Baseball collective bargaining agreement expires on December 1st, 2026.
Just coming up fast.
So fast.
Yeah.
And the two sides are barreling toward what the attorney and writer Carlos M. Figueroa, who writes this fantastic newsletter called The Ballpark Barrister, he calls it a constitutional standoff over a salary cap.
Right.
And then you throw in this completely unprecedented federal investigation into the union's own finances, and you have like literally billions of dollars and the fate of the sport itself just hanging by a very thin legal thread.
It's tense. But, the media drama surrounding these negotiations, it always feels so chaotic and emotional.
Oh, totally. Like a soap opera.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But when you actually analyze the cold, hard mechanics of labor law, which is what Figueroa does so well, the unfolding chaos becomes surprisingly predictable.
Really? Predictable how?
Well, because the emotional theater is just noise, you
Yeah.
know? The legal framework dictates the actual moves available on the chessboard. The drama isn't about whether these people actually like each other. It's about what the National Labor Relations Act legally allows them to do to each other.
Okay, I definitely want to get into the specific laws governing this, but first, I feel like we need to understand the basic foundation of the conflict. Because I hear the acronym CBA thrown around constantly in sports media, right? Collective Bargaining Agreement. At its most literal level, Figueroa explains it's a legally binding contract setting the terms of employment between an employer and a union.
Basic labor law, yeah.
Right, but who exactly are the entities signing this massive document in baseball? Because it's not just one boss and one worker.
No, and actually defining the employer in this context is the very first complex legal maneuver.
Okay, how so?
Because the employer is not one person. It's not one corporate board. It is the 30 Major League Baseball clubs, all acting collectively through the commissioner's office.
So they sort of Voltron themselves into one boss.
Yes, exactly. They are legally binding themselves together as a single employing entity for the sake of these negotiations. Because if they didn't do this, the union could just pick off teams one by one.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they'd negotiate a separate deal with the Yankees and then a totally different one with the Royals. By bargaining as a single unit, the owners consolidate all their leverage.
That makes a lot of sense. And on the other side, you have the Major League Baseball Players Association, right? The MLBPA.
Right.
And Figueroa notes this is historically like one of the most powerful labor unions in American professional sports.
Without a doubt.
But what are they actually bargaining over? Because, I mean, a standard employment contract just says, hey, I will pay you X dollars to do Y job. But this CBA is hundreds of pages long.
It's a massive document, and that's because it covers absolutely everything that dictates a player's professional life, their compensation, and their mobility.
Everything.
Everything. It dictates the absolute minimum salaries a team is legally allowed to pay an entry-level player. It establishes the highly contentious service time rules.
Wait, let me just make sure I have this right through the deep dive. Service time is basically the clock that determines when a player is finally allowed to negotiate their own worth on the open market, right?
That's the gist of it, yeah.
Like, if a team calls a player up to the majors, they control his rights for 6 full years before he hits free agency.
That is the core of it, yes. Service time is arguably the single most valuable currency in baseball economics. And the CBA dictates exactly how many days on a major league roster constitutes a full year of service.
Wow, okay. Down to the day.
Down to the day. It also dictates the rules of salary arbitration, which is that system they use for players who are stuck in that middle ground between making the league minimum and hitting full free agency.
Right, the arbitration years.
Yep. Plus, it dictates the amateur draft, which determines how new labor even enters the market. It governs how the teams share revenue amongst themselves to maintain, competitive balance. And crucially, this is a big one, it outlines the grievance process.
The grievance process, so basically the internal court system for when one side inevitably accuses the other side of cheating or breaking the rules.
Precisely. Like if a team manipulates a player's service time by keeping him in the minor leagues for an extra 2 weeks.
Just to delay his free agency by an entire year?
Exactly. If they do that, the union files a grievance. The CBA outlines the exact mechanism for resolving that dispute through a neutral arbitrator. It really is a comprehensive framework governing every single economic and disciplinary interaction.
Figueroa uses a phrase that I keep coming back to in my head. He calls the CBA the constitution of the game's labor relationship.
It's a very apt description.
It is. And I think of it kind of like the operating system on a smartphone.
Okay, I like that.
Because as a fan, when you turn on your phone, you only really care about the apps, right? The apps are the games, the players, the incredible diving catches in center field. You just want to tap the app and be entertained.
Right. Nobody buys a phone to stare at the settings menu.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the apps cannot function without the operating system running silently in the background, telling the hardware how to process the software. The CBA is literally the iOS of baseball.
That analogy holds up really well structurally, but we have to push it a little further to understand the legal reality.
Right, push it further.
Well, a constitution, or an operating system in your metaphor, is an existential document. It establishes the very reality in which the two sides exist. But here's the terrifying thing about a labor constitution.
What's that?
It only possesses power for as long as both sides mutually agree to be governed by it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, Apple doesn't need your permission to keep iOS running on your phone, right?
Yeah.
But in baseball, if the owners and the players don't ratify a new agreement by December 1st, 2026, the foundational laws of the sports economy literally cease to exist.
So if the operating system crashes, your phone just becomes a useless, expensive brick. You can't open the apps. You can't watch the game.
Exactly.
But what actually happens at 12:01 a.m. on December 2nd? The Constitution is just gone. Do the players just stop being employees? Does the league simply cease to exist as a corporate entity?
No. The league certainly doesn't cease to exist, but the legal landscape violently shifts. And to understand what happens at that exact minute, 12:01 a.m., we actually have to look outside of baseball entirely.
Okay. Where are we looking?
We have to look at the federal law that governs this entire process, regardless of whether the CBA is active or expired. Because remember, they aren't just sitting in a conference room out of a shared love for the game.
Right. They're forced to be there.
Yes. They are compelled to be there by the National Labor Relations Act, or the NLRA.
A law that was passed in, 1935?
1935.
We were talking about Depression-era legislation dictating the behavior of modern billionaires and modern millionaire athletes.
It sounds wild, but it's the absolute bedrock of American labor law. The NLRA gave American workers the fundamental right to organize into unions and bargain collectively with their employers.
Yeah.
It established the actual rules of engagement between capital and labor. And this is where we have to address a famous, highly unusual legal quirk regarding Major League Baseball.
Yes, the antitrust exemption. I was hoping we would get to this. Because for you listening, because of a Supreme Court decision from 1922, baseball is legally allowed to operate as a monopoly in a way that other businesses simply cannot.
It's a massive anomaly.
It is. They can collude to control the market, they can dictate where franchises can relocate, and they can completely crush any competing leagues.
Right, and that exemption provides a massive legal shield for the owner's business operations. However, and this is the absolute crux of Figueroa's analysis here, that antitrust exemption does not extend to labor law.
Oh, really?
No, it doesn't. The NLRA applies to Major League Baseball in full. There is no special carve-out when it comes to employer-employee relations.
So they're treated just like anyone else.
Exactly. Under the eyes of the federal government, the players are simply workers, and the clubs are simply employers. So whether you are assembling cars on a factory line in Detroit or you're throwing a 100-mile-per-hour fastball in Los Angeles, The labor rules are identical.
So if the rules are identical, what is the core mandate of the NLRA? How does a 1935 law force two deeply antagonistic sides to actually sit down and rewrite the entire economic code of a sport?
The central pillar of the NLRA is the legal obligation to engage in what's called good faith bargaining over wages, hours, and working conditions.
Good faith. I feel like this term gets thrown around in cable news constantly.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, like people use it informally to mean, hey, be reasonable, play fair, don't be a jerk. But I'm guessing in federal court, good faith is a highly precise, highly forensic standard.
It is entirely forensic. Good faith is not a vibe.
Right.
And it is definitely not about politeness. It has been built up over nearly a century of federal case law and decisions by the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB.
Okay, so what does it actually require them to do?
Well, physically, it requires the parties to show up to the table at reasonable times and intervals. And it requires them to send representatives who actually have the authority to make a deal.
Oh, that makes sense. So if the union sends like a junior lawyer who has to call the executive director every time a single proposal is made, that could be deemed bad faith.
Exactly. That's a classic stalling tactic.
And I'm assuming it also involves the actual exchange of information, right? Like if the owners say, look, we literally cannot afford to raise the minimum salary to $1 million because our regional sports networks are going bankrupt.
Which is a very real argument right now.
Right. So the union isn't just expected to take their word for it, are they?
Correct. The NLRA mandates that if an employer claims financial inability to meet a demand, if they literally plead poverty, they are legally required to open their books.
Wow.
Yeah, they have to provide the union with the financial documentation to prove it. Good faith requires participating in the actual mechanical process of trying to forge an agreement. You know, you have to exchange counterproposals. You have to provide rationales for your positions.
But I see a massive trap here.
What's that?
What does good faith not require? Because, I mean, I can sit at a table, review your financial documents, listen to your really well thought out rationale, and still just tell you to jump in a lake.
Yes. And that is the vital distinction. Good faith does not mean you have to agree. It does not mean you are legally required to split the difference or meet in the middle or compromise on a core fundamental position.
So you could just say no.
An owner can walk into that room, look the union straight in the eye and say, we hear your proposal for earlier free agency. We understand your rationale. We have reviewed all your data, and our answer is absolutely, unequivocally no. We will never agree to this.
Wow.
Yeah. And as long as they are genuinely engaging in the procedural mechanics of bargaining, standing their ground is completely 100% legal.
Okay, let me try to map this out for you listening. So the federal government, via the NLRA, is basically acting like a mandatory couples counselor for the owners and the players.
I like this.
Right. The law forces you to drive to the clinic, sit on the couch together, and talk through your issues. But the government counselor cannot legally force you to stay married.
No, they can't.
And they can't force you to compromise on who gets the house in the divorce. They just force you to actually have the conversation.
The analogy works perfectly, provided you understand the enforcement mechanism.
Okay, what's the enforcement?
Well, the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, they are the counselor observing the session. And their job is to figure out if someone is faking their participation. Which introduces a concept Figueroa highlights called surface bargaining.
Surface bargaining, like going through the motions.
It is the exact legal opposite of good faith.
Got it.
Surface bargaining is going through the theatrical motions of a negotiation without any genuine underlying intent to actually reach an agreement. It's showing up to the counseling session, drinking the coffee, nodding your head, but fundamentally rejecting the premise of finding a resolution.
But here's my issue with that. How on earth does a federal referee prove what is in someone's head?
It's incredibly difficult, right?
Like, how do you forensically prove that a billionaire owner who's just sitting quietly at a table is surface bargaining versus just driving a genuinely hard bargain? Because if I'm an owner, I'm just going to say, look, I'm not surface bargaining. I just really hate their proposal.
And that is the most difficult challenge in labor law. So the NLRB looks at the totality of conduct. They'll subpoena emails, internal memos, bargaining notes.
Everything.
And they look closely at the timing of proposals. Let's say the owners demand a massive cut to player salaries. The union spends a whole month drafting this detailed counterproposal.
Okay.
The owners look at it for 3 minutes and immediately reject it without asking a single question.
Just dead on arrival.
Right. And then they introduce a brand new, incredibly hostile demand that wasn't even on the table before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The NLRB looks at that pattern of behavior and determines that the owners are intentionally stalling and creating impossible conditions specifically to avoid reaching an agreement.
So accusations of bad faith and surface bargaining are basically launched like missiles in every single difficult baseball negotiation.
Constantly. I mean, it is a standard tactical maneuver to file unfair labor practice charges with the NLRB, accusing the other side of bad faith.
Just to put the heat on them?
Exactly. It's a way to apply legal and public relations pressure.
Okay, so the table is set. They're sitting on the couch. They're exchanging proposals. They're legally navigating this incredibly complex minefield of good faith. But that ticking clock we talked about, it doesn't stop for anyone.
No, it keeps ticking.
So December 1st, 2026, strikes midnight. The CBA Constitution officially expires. And let's say there is no deal. What happens? Does the sport just shut down instantly?
This is where we really have to look at the transition from peacetime to wartime.
Okay.
When the CBA is active, stability reigns supreme. The employers cannot unilaterally change the terms of employment. The union cannot legally go on strike over any issue covered by the existing contract. If there's a dispute, they take it to arbitration.
Everything is orderly.
Very orderly. But when the CBA expires, that peacetime ends. However, the law does not allow for instant anarchy.
Right, because if I'm a greedy owner, the minute the clock strikes 12:01 a.m., I'm slashing everyone's salary by 50% and, canceling the chartered team flights.
Oh, and you would immediately be hit with massive federal penalties for doing that.
Really? Even though contracts expire?
Yes, because the NLRA dictates that even after a contract expires, the employer is generally required to maintain the status quo on all mandatory subjects of bargaining.
Ah, so they can't just change things.
Nope. So on December 2nd, the owners have to keep paying the players based on the expired salary structures. They have to keep providing the exact same health insurance.
They have to keep operating under the ghost of the expired agreement while negotiations continue.
The ghost of the agreement. I like that. Yes.
But there has to be an escape hatch, right? Like they can't just be trapped in the ghost of an expired contract forever if they genuinely hate each other and refuse to agree on a new one.
There is an escape hatch. And it brings us to one of the most powerful, dangerous, and heavily scrutinized words in all of labor law: impasse.
Impasse. It sounds like an indie French movie where two people just stare at each other in a cafe.
It does.
But Figueroa points out this word is actually doing a massive amount of legal heavy lifting.
It is the absolute fulcrum of the entire labor struggle.
Okay, break it down for us.
If the two sides reach a genuine, legally recognized impasse, the landscape fundamentally changes.
Oh, so?
Once an impasse is declared and validated, the employers suddenly gain the legal right to bypass the union entirely and unilaterally implement their last best offer.
Wait, hold on. Let me process this.
Yeah, it's big.
If the owners can prove an impasse, they get to act like dictators. Like they can just implement whatever their final proposal was, and the players just have to accept it.
Well, the players don't have to accept it. They can go on strike, but yes, legally, the owners can unilaterally alter the status quo and implement their final offer. They can just force those final terms onto the workplace.
So, okay, if I'm the commissioner representing the 30 billionaire owners, and I know that declaring an impasse magically gives me the power to force my final lowball offer down the players' throats,
Right.
my entire strategy should be to manufacture an impasse as fast as humanly possible. I would sit at the table on December 1st, say no to absolutely everything, declare an impasse on December 2nd, and implement my dream scenario. Why wouldn't they just fake it?
Because the National Labor Relations Board knows exactly how tempting that strategy is, and they scrutinize claims of impasse with an electron microscope. The burden of proof to establish a legal impasse is astronomical.
So it's not just saying, hey, we're stuck.
No, it is not simply one side standing up, throwing their hands in the air and declaring, well, we're stuck. Talks have broken down.
So what physical forensic evidence does the NLRB actually look at to determine if an impasse is real or fake?
They look at the entire granular history of the negotiations. To legally establish an impasse, you have to definitively prove that the bargaining process has been entirely, comprehensively exhausted in good faith. Completely. And that bringing the parties back to the table would be mathematically and logically futile. The NLRB will look at the frequency of meetings. They will look at the distance between the proposals.
Could you give me a concrete example? Like, how does an owner fail to prove an impasse?
Sure. Let's say the owners want a hard salary cap of $200 million and the union wants no cap at all.
Okay, a pretty standard starting point.
Right. They argue about this for 6 months. Finally, the owners declare an impasse and try to implement their $200 million cap.
Seems like they're stuck.
It does. But the NLRB reviews the bargaining notes and sees that 2 days before the owners declared impasse, the union offered a counterproposal where they agreed to a severe luxury tax penalty if payrolls exceeded $250 million.
Oh, so it's not a cap, but it's movement.
Exactly. The NLRB will look at that luxury tax proposal and say, the union moved. They offered a new concept to address your economic concerns. You didn't even explore it.
Well,
Movement occurred. Therefore, further bargaining was not mathematically futile. Your declaration of impasse is invalid.
and what happens to the owners if the NLRB rules their impasse was fake? Do they just have to, like, go back to the table and apologize?
No. The consequences are catastrophic.
Really?
Declaring a fake impasse to unilaterally implement changes is the absolute definition of bad faith in surface bargaining. It is a massive violation of federal law.
So what's the penalty?
If an employer implements changes based on a fake impasse, the NLRB can order them to reverse all those changes immediately.
Okay, that makes sense.
But more importantly, they can order massive amounts of back pay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If the owners implemented a lower salary structure based on a fake impasse, they would have to back pay every single player in the league the difference with interest plus severe financial penalties.
That's huge.
The financial risk of getting it wrong is astronomical.
It's like trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster, and if you miss the needle, the roller coaster just derails into a volcano.
That's a very vivid way to put it, but yes.
It's incredibly difficult to prove, and the legal blowback, if you fail, essentially destroys your entire operation.
Exactly.
So if forcing an impasse is so legally dangerous, what do they actually do? Like, when December 1st hits, the contract has expired, they hate each other, but they can't legally declare an impasse yet. What weapons do they actually pull out?
Well, because proving an impasse is so difficult and so risky, the owners and the players almost always bypass it entirely.
Okay.
Instead, they rely on their alternative, far more brutal, far more straightforward weapons, the work stoppage.
The work stoppage.
Right.
And this brings us to what happened recently and what is honestly inevitably going to happen in 2026.
Yes.
Because once that CBA constitution expires, the chains kind of come off both sides, right?
Yeah.
The players gain the legal right to go on strike, provided they give the proper notice. And the employers, the owners, gain the legal right to lock the players out.
Exactly. And Figueroa really wants us to look very closely at the timeline of the last expiration back in December 2021.
Okay, let's look at 2021.
Because the 2021 lockout is essentially the template for everything we're going to see in 2026.
The long one, right?
It lasted 99 days. It was the first official work stoppage in baseball since the devastating 1994-1995 strike.
Man, I remember the 1994 strike. That literally canceled the World Series.
It did.
The Montreal Expos were the best team in baseball, and the season just vanished.
Yeah.
But in 1994, the players walked out. In 2021, the owners initiated the stoppage. So for you listening, what is the fundamental tactical distinction between a strike and a lockout?
It all comes down to who holds the leverage of timing and control.
Okay.
A strike is an employee-initiated stoppage. The workers choose to withhold their labor to inflict economic pain on the boss.
Right.
And the players usually time a strike for late in the season, right before the playoffs, because that is when the owners make the lion's share of their national television revenue.
Right.
The players strike when it hurts the owners the most.
Okay, so a strike is an offensive weapon for the players, but a lockout is the exact opposite.
A lockout is an employer-initiated work stoppage. The employers literally prevent the employees from working. And in 2021, the owners made a highly deliberate, highly calculated, strategic choice.
Which was?
They locked the players out at 12:01 a.m. on December 2nd, the literal minute the CBA expired.
Wow. Just immediately.
Immediately. They didn't wait for the players to strike in August. They fired the preemptive shot in December.
Well, let me try to visualize the physical reality of a lockout versus a strike.
Okay, go ahead.
Because a strike is that classic labor image, right?
Yep.
It's the workers in their uniforms, walking out of the factory doors in protest, holding picket signs. They're choosing to stand outside.
Right.
But a lockout, it's like management driving up to the factory in the middle of the night, chaining the doors shut from the outside, turning off the heat, and putting a sign on the door that says, "We will unlock these doors and let you earn a living when you agree to our terms."
That is precisely the dynamic. And by locking the players out in December, the owners dictate the narrative and control the economic pressure. Think about the timing.
Yeah, December.
December is the dead heart of the baseball offseason. There are no games being played, so the owners aren't losing any ticket sales or immediate television revenue.
Oh, wow.
But for the players, December is everything.
Because of free agency.
Yes, free agency is the culmination of a player's entire life's work.
Right, they've been waiting for this.
You have players and their high-powered agents who have spent 6 years grinding through that service time system we talked about, making a fraction of their true market value. And they are finally free agents. They're banking on signing massive, life-altering, multi-million-dollar contracts in December and January.
And a lockout just chains the door shut on the entire industry.
Instantly. Free agency is frozen, trades are frozen.
Wow.
Players cannot even use team facilities to rehab injuries. They cannot communicate with team doctors. The entire business of baseball just goes completely dark.
That is brutal. So suddenly these players are just sitting at home, looking at their bank accounts, realizing that their massive payday is indefinitely delayed.
Exactly. And the pressure on the union to cave and make a deal becomes immense. The owners use the freezing of the market to economically suffocate the players.
It really is a siege tactic. They basically surround the castle and just wait for the players to run out of food.
That's exactly what it is.
And, ESPN is already reporting that a lockout is the most likely scenario for December 1st, 2026.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Because both sides have had 4 entire years to study the tape from that 99-day lockout in 2021. They know what worked. They know where the pressure points are. So the 2026 expiration isn't just going to be a negotiation. It's going to be this highly calculated, hyper-advanced legal chess match.
Oh, absolutely. But here's where our analysis really has to shift.
Okay, why is that?
Because 2026 is not going to be a simple copy-paste of 2021. The landscape has fundamentally shifted. Both the core economic issues on the table and the structural integrity of the union itself are drastically different than they were 5 years ago.
And this is the part of Figueroa's analysis that genuinely shocked me. Because I'm thinking, what exactly are these two sides preparing to go to war over in 2026?
It's big.
It's huge. It's not just a debate over, tweaking the minimum salary or altering the luxury tax thresholds. Figueroa lays it out perfectly. The central, unavoidable fight for 2026 revolves around 2 words that strike absolute terror into the hearts of baseball players.
A salary cap.
A salary cap.
Yes. The salary cap is essentially the white whale for Major League Baseball owners. They have been hunting it for decades.
And just so we're clear, a salary cap is a hard mathematical limit on how much a team can spend on its player roster, right?
Exactly. The National Football League has a hard cap. The National Hockey League has a hard cap. The NBA has a complex soft cap system.
Right.
Major League Baseball is the only major American sport without one.
Why do the owners want it so badly? I mean, beyond just saving money.
Cost certainty.
Cost certain.
It guarantees their profit margins. If a billionaire owner knows that the absolute maximum he is legally allowed to spend on player payroll is, say, $200 million, he can project his television and ticket revenues against that fixed cost and guarantee a massive profit every single year.
That makes a lot of business sense.
It does. It also protects owners from themselves. It stops the wealthiest owners, like the Mets or the Dodgers, from spending $350 million and driving up the price of labor for everyone else.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
But cost certainty for the owners basically means wage suppression for the workers.
Exactly, which is why the players absolutely, fundamentally, categorically refuse to entertain the concept.
It's a deal breaker.
It is the reddest of red lines. The union views a salary cap as an artificial, illegal mechanism designed solely to suppress their wages in a sport that generates nearly $11 billion in annual revenue.
Right. They see the pie getting bigger.
Exactly. The players' stance is simple. We are the product. We generate the billions. We should be paid exactly what the free market dictates we are worth, without some artificial ceiling holding us down.
I mean, they literally went on strike and canceled the World Series in 1994, specifically to prevent the owners from forcing a salary cap into the CBA.
Yeah, they did.
And Figueroa calls the 2026 demand a constitutional standoff. And having read his breakdown of the legal mechanics, I really see why. I mean, this isn't two sides arguing over whether the minimum salary should be $750,000 or $775,000.
No, not at all.
This is a massive, violent clash of economic reality.
It is an ideological war. If the owners successfully implement a salary cap, it completely rewrites the iOS of baseball.
Right, going back to our phone analogy.
Yeah, it destroys the entire economic premise the union has built over the last 50 years. When you have a constitutional standoff of this magnitude, compromise is incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
So they're just completely entrenched.
The owners are demanding a brand new operating system. The union is saying they will burn the smartphone to the ground before they let you install it.
Wow. So if this were a normal year, we would just buckle up for a long, brutal lockout, right? We'd expect the owners to freeze the market in December, starve the free agents out, and see who blinks first in April or May.
Under normal circumstances, yes.
But there is a wild card in play for 2026. Something Figueroa highlights that almost no one else in the mainstream sports media is actually analyzing through the lens of labor leverage.
And it changes everything. The federal investigation.
Yes. For you listening, this is wild. The Major League Baseball Players Association is currently under federal investigation into its finances.
Right.
This investigation was launched around May 2025, and the Department of Justice or the Department of Labor or both are actively auditing the internal financial workings of the union itself.
Which is unprecedented, and we need to analyze exactly how this disrupts the mechanics we spent the last hour discussing.
Okay, how does it disrupt things?
Well, the entire NLRA framework, good faith bargaining, proving an impasse, surviving a lockout, all of it operates under a very specific assumption.
What's the assumption?
It assumes that you have two functioning, coherent, unified entities sitting across the table from each other. It assumes a unified management group and a strong, fully operational labor union.
But how does an internal federal investigation actually physically disrupt that assumption? I mean, an investigation is just lawyers looking at spreadsheets, right? How does it damage the union's leverage against the owners?
Because leverage in a labor negotiation is entirely dependent on projecting absolute unbreakable unity.
Oh.
To survive a lockout, the union leadership has to look the owners in the eye and say, we represent all 1,200 players on the 40-man rosters. We are willing to miss paychecks. We are willing to lose games. We are willing to bleed to win this fight. And every single player is behind us.
Right, because if the owners sense that the players are fracturing, they'll just wait them out.
Precisely. But a union under active federal scrutiny cannot easily project that unity. Think about the day-to-day operational reality of a federal audit.
It's got to be a nightmare.
The union leadership is paralyzed. The general counsel and the executive director are not spending 100% of their time modeling economic counterproposals to defeat the salary cap.
Right.
They are spending half their day responding to federal subpoenas, sitting for depositions, and consulting with white-collar criminal defense attorneys.
They're completely distracted.
It's worse than distraction. It breeds internal suspicion.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Imagine you are a rank-and-file player, a middle reliever making the league minimum.
Okay.
You are being asked by your union leaders to sacrifice your salary, to endure a 100-day lockout, to fight the billionaire owners over the salary cap.
Right, to put my livelihood on the line.
Yes. But at the exact same time, you are reading in the Wall Street Journal that those exact same union leaders are being investigated by the federal government for potentially mishandling union dues.
Oh, wow.
Are you going to blindly follow them into a labor war?
Structural weaknesses exposed.
Right.
The players start questioning the competency or even the honesty of the very people demanding their sacrifice.
Exactly. When the owners look across the bargaining table, they don't see a unified army ready for a siege.
What do they see?
They see an organization fighting a two-front war. One war is against the owners over the salary cap, and the other war is against the federal government over their own internal survival.
I see exactly what you mean. It really is psychological warfare.
Let me try to paint the picture of what this feels like, just to ground it for the listeners.
Go for it.
Imagine sitting down to play the absolute highest stakes poker game of your entire life.
Okay.
You're holding your cards, you're trying to bluff the billionaire owners sitting across the table, trying to project total confidence that you hold a winning hand.
Right.
But while you're trying to hold that poker face, an auditor from the IRS is standing directly behind you, actively auditing your wallet in front of everyone at the table.
That's hilarious but accurate. Right? They are literally pulling receipts out of your pockets. Your poker face is completely, totally compromised.
Yeah.
The billionaires across the table don't even need to look at your cards. They know you are distracted, vulnerable, and bleeding chips.
That is a highly accurate assessment of the psychological dynamic.
Yeah.
And in labor law, psychological vulnerability translates directly into mathematical leverage.
Wow.
The owners know exactly how much pressure the union leadership is under from the feds, and they will absolutely use that leverage to push harder for the salary cap.
I want to make an absolute impartiality check right here for everyone tuning in.
Good idea.
Because we are dealing with intense labor disputes and federal investigations, and it is very, very easy to assign moral judgments here.
Right.
We are not taking sides. We are not saying the owners are greedy villains for wanting a salary cap. We are not saying the union leadership is corrupt or guilty of whatever the federal government is investigating.
Absolutely not.
We are strictly, objectively looking at the mechanics of the situation. We are simply observing how the introduction of federal scrutiny shifts the mathematical leverage under the framework of the National Labor Relations Act. The legal merits of the federal investigation are completely separate from the tactical reality it creates at the bargaining table.
I agree completely. This is an objective analysis of the battlefield. The NLRA works as designed when both sides are operating normally.
Right.
The laws of good faith and impasse assume operational parity, but when one side is dealing with massive internal disruption from an outside federal agency, the dynamics change in ways that are going to drastically dictate the outcome of the December 1st, 2026 expiration.
It tilts the board.
Exactly. The owners hold a structural advantage they simply did not have in 2021.
This has been an absolutely fascinating excavation of the machinery. To try and synthesize this incredible journey for everyone listening, we started by looking at the beautiful spectacle of the game on the field, and we dug down into the cold, hard pipes underneath.
The plumbing.
The plumbing. We learned that behind the breathless, emotional media drama of a looming December 2026 lockout, there is a rigid, highly predictable legal framework dictating every single move.
The rules of engagement are set.
Yes, the CBA is the Constitution. The NLRA forces the mandatory couples counseling of good faith bargaining, where the NLRA scrutinizes every email and proposal to ensure nobody is surface bargaining.
Right.
We learned that faking an impasse is a legal death sentence that results in massive back pay penalties, which is why the owners bypass it entirely and rely on the brutal door-chaining, market-freezing strategy of the lockout.
Precisely.
And finally, we see how this upcoming existential war over a salary cap is going to collide head-on with a structurally compromised union currently paralyzed by federal subpoenas. It really is a perfect storm of labor mechanics.
The table is definitely set for an incredibly complex legal showdown. But before we wrap up today, I actually want to leave you, the listener, with a final puzzle to mull over.
Oh, I love a puzzle.
So Figueroa teased his next Ballpark Barrister newsletter by bringing up something we briefly touched on earlier.
The antitrust exemption.
Yes, the antitrust exemption. That 1922 Supreme Court decision by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes.
Right, the one that said baseball is somehow not a monopoly.
Exactly. That 1922 decision created the legal fiction that baseball is not engaged in interstate commerce and therefore is completely exempt from federal monopoly laws.
Which is wild.
It is wild. Now, we established today that this exemption does not apply to labor law, right? The NLRA applies fully to the relationship between the owners and the players. But Figueroa asks us to ponder this contradiction.
Okay, what is it?
If baseball is legally treated as an industry bound by the exact same labor laws as any other factory or coal mine or business in America,
right,
how does an over 100-year-old legal fiction exempting it from monopoly laws cast a shadow over these negotiations?
Well, because if they are a legal monopoly, they have no competitors. They have infinite revenue streams that aren't threatened by a rival league.
Exactly. I want you to think about this the next time you turn on the TV to watch a game.
Okay.
When you see that pristine grass and hear the crack of the bat, are you just watching a sport? Or are you watching a legally protected, government-sanctioned monopoly currently at war with its own workforce?
Oh, wow. That is a lingering thought if I've ever heard one. The pristine grass hiding the creaking pipes underneath.
Exactly.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive into Ballpark Barrister's incredible work. We highly encourage you to keep this entire framework in mind the next time a sports headline drops about a work stoppage.
It changes how you read the news.
It really does. You now know the machinery behind the magic trick. Keep questioning this spectacle, and we'll see you next time.